Welcome to the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast. This is Nate Goss. This episode is part 3 in a series we are sharing from the Libertyville High School student publication Drops of Ink. The series is a history of racism in Libertyville and the North Shore. And as I said in the last episode, you're going to hear the host, Conor Kennedy, talk about ways to listen to the previous 2 parts. If you are just now joining us and haven't heard those other 2 parts, you can do it the way Conor says to do it, or you can also just listen to our previous 2 episodes in this podcast. For those of you who have stuck with the series, I just want to thank you for listening. I want to send another thank you to Conor Kennedy for his work on this project and for doing such a great job putting it together and hosting it. And again, thank you to Libertyville High School and particularly Mr. Gluskin for giving us the permission to share this with you. It is our hope that this really is just the tip of the iceberg as far as how far listeners will dig into the history that we have in this country of racism. I don't have an exact date for you, but shortly our blog Shelf Life is going to be putting together a massive resource list on anti-racism with books and movies and resources and articles and things that will help you keep moving, keep going with this. Don't stop with this podcast series. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep learning. Let's keep listening. And as we look back at this history, let's also look towards the future and keep on moving forward. So here it is. This is part 3, the final part in the series, and we just want to thank you so much for listening.
You're listening to Drops of Ink Radio, a podcast about the people and policies that shape the world around us. I'm your host, Conor Kennedy. This is episode 3, the last segment in a 3-part special series on race in the Libertyville and Chicago area. If you haven't already gotten a chance to listen to episodes 1 and 2 of the show, I highly recommend doing so. You can find them online at lhsdoi.com. Once you're there, just search podcast. Episode 3 is about where we live today. As we've explored in episodes 1 and 2, the suburban world we know was shaped by policies and practices that segregated people according to their race. In particular, housing was divided by race, which meant that neighborhoods were divided by race. That meant whole towns were thus separated from other towns and villages by boundaries that were more than just geographical. But many people living in suburbia don't know this history.
I don't think about, racial demographics.
Not too often, if at all, really.
Not really a lot until I go somewhere outside of Libertyville.
I don't know. Never really thought about it.
I was looking up Libertyville, Illinois. Looks a little bit like Winchester, Massachusetts.
That is Debbie Irving. She's an author who grew up in Winchester, a wealthy white suburb of Boston.
I'm Debbie Irving, and I was once an elementary school teacher, and before that a nonprofit manager. But because of hard lessons I learned in those places, I'm now a racial justice educator and writer. So I blog occasionally, but I've written a book called Waking Up White that's gotten a lot of attention.
Irving described in her book how she grew up in a privileged community without even realizing the extent of or the basis for that privilege. It wasn't until her late 40s when she took a master's course called Racial and Cultural Identity.
Which I didn't really think I needed because I live in this very multicultural, diverse city, and I thought that I was doing okay. And I got into the course, and it was a heavy-duty, 5 months of so much reading, films, really heavy-duty self-reflection. And I came out of that course absolutely dumbstruck at the history that I had never learned. And by the way, I was a history major at Kenyon College. I had one of the best educations that money can buy in America. I went to a private school and girls' school in Boston. Went to this fabulous college. I went to graduate school. I went to got my master's in business. And here I was at the age of 48, hearing about redlining for the first time, and hearing personal testimony from people who had lived on the downside of racial discrimination. I'd never heard those stories.
She had never heard them because she hadn't known any African Americans in her white suburban childhood.
And I came out of there thinking, I would really wish who made the decision that I couldn't handle this information? Who decided that systems history not to be taught. So that's what I set out to do, was to make this information more accessible.
Irving's book is called Waking Up White, Finding Myself in the Story of Race.
Once I woke up, I just saw the world almost 180 degrees differently. It was unbelievable. And reflecting back on my life, I finally understood tense moments here and there, something someone had said that I didn't understand 20 years ago. All of a sudden, all of it started to make sense. And the finding myself in the story of race means I really didn't think that I had a story of race. I thought race stories were for people who were suffering from racism, black and brown people. And so I could check off white on a census, but I didn't understand that I had a racial identity, or that in addition to being socialized, I had been racialized as a part of that socialization. And so it's really about coming to terms with, whoa, I'm finding this huge personal story in race, and I wouldn't have told you I had one. Everybody does. Every American has their own story of how racism has shaped their lives.
Whether we realize it or not, Irving told me, we either benefit or suffer from the way race has manifested itself in American life.
I knew that I had class privilege. I understood that. I did not connect it to skin color privilege. It's white people who don't know what they don't know, which is how I would describe myself. Now, I thought anyone in the world could move to Winchester. Not true.
Because of racially restrictive covenants and redlining in Massachusetts, Winchester was predominantly white, and that had benefits for Irving and her white neighbors.
Think about how education is tied to real estate value, and real estate value is tied to skin color. And so in white towns, real estate values are higher, which means that the school budgets are much higher. Now, there are some exceptions. Some states and areas have flattened that out. But in general, across our country, school budgets are determined by property tax. And someone living in that white town, it has access to better schools, and in fact, better medical care, better transportation, better food supply, more parks and recreation, cleaner air, higher levels of safety. So it might not feel like you did anything, but you're certainly benefiting from it.
Irving contends that because of segregative mechanisms previously in place, today white people generally are more privileged at the expense of African Americans. To explain, she used the example of low-income, predominantly black neighborhoods, many of which are segregated from upper-income white enclaves.
And now you go into those neighborhoods. I mean, this is the kind of neighborhood that Freddie Gray, Michael Brown live in. And the tendency as a white person living a comfortable white bubble life is to say, oh, those people that just don't know how to get it together. And you have to be educated to understand that there are systems in play that have simultaneously advantaged white people at the expense of people of color. And that is a really bitter pill to swallow when you came into the world not wanting to be a part of this, expecting to be a part of it, and now here's what you've inherited.
So what did we inherit here in Libertyville? One of Libertyville High School's most famous alumni, guitarist Tom Morello, grew up here in Libertyville in the 1970s. Now, I wasn't able to secure an interview with him, but Rolling Stone's Brittany Spanos did in 2015. In that interview, Morello described growing up here, and he said, I literally integrated the town of Libertyville, Illinois, according to the realtor. At 1 year old, I was the only black person residing within its borders. My political friends often ask, oh, how did you become politicized? Was it by reading Noam Chomsky? It was when I was in kindergarten on the playground and people called me names and tripped out on my hair and the color of my skin. It was from those very early experiences that I was like, man, shit's just not right. However, one would think that attitudes and behaviors have changed since the 1970s, but in Libertyville, they haven't changed enough.
Like, so much stuff happened to me that it just, like, flew over my head, and, like, I couldn't even, like, tell you how many times, like, I've heard racist comments in, like, the hallways at LHS, but, yeah, that's definitely not addressed, and I think that that's, like, an actual issue at LHS.
Erica Jones graduated from Libertyville High School in 2015. Now, she's a student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and she speaks fondly of her friends and her time here. But as an African-American in a school whose student body was 82% white, not all of it was pleasant for her.
Okay, so there's two different kinds of, like, racism that I saw at LHS. There were the kinds that were always from the same people, and there would be, like, malicious jokes, and they'd just be like the other kind, like the other versus the other kind, which is like kind of just like ignorant comments that would be like about my hair, like something like just really stupid that I'm like, that was racist, but I'm not even going to address it because I know that you don't know any better kind of situation. But like definitely the ones that were like malicious kind of situations were coming from the same people all the time. And I would just know like that's, even if I tried to say like to like refute their statements or try to like say like anything back to them, it would never change their mind about me. So I just kind of like left them be, like let them be, you know what I mean? And it would always happen from the same people, same kind of crowd of people. But you just learn to kind of like ignore them, or you learn to just kind of like walk away from them in those kind of situations because it's kind of just ridiculous. You even have to like listen to them. You know what I mean?
Erica heard many racist stereotypes from her classmates.
Oh my gosh, Erica, your hair is so different. It's so like coarse, or like I wish my hair could do that, or like it's just like other times it's like oh Erica, we know you know how to twerk, and I'm like I really don't know how to twerk. You know what I mean? It's like can you swim? Yeah, I can swim. Yeah, so it's like those kind of situations that are just like, why would you even be asking me this question like that? You like, it's just stupid questions that like people know are racist, but like they say it anyways. They're like, just like, oh yeah, it's just really overtly racist. And then like they're like, oh, you like fried, like the fried chicken joke. Like I don't know how many times I've heard that joke, but like it will never die. Like it just will never die.
But it wasn't always something Erica could laugh at.
Well, when people say just like those kind of like ignorant, stupid stuff that like honestly like baffles me sometimes, but it's just like they don't know any better. Like I don't know. I kind of like, it makes me want to just like not go to school sometimes. It's like I really don't even want to hear these comments anymore. But then on the other hand, I kind of just want to educate people and say like that's not what you're supposed to say. But being in my position, I never like actually stood up for anything that like has been said to me, which I kind of makes me disappointed in myself because I feel like I should have been educating people more.
But should Erica really feel responsible for educating her white classmates? Debbie Irving says larger scale action must be taken to educate people about the history of race in America.
When I say that we're missing history, there's a large amount of work to be done in terms of just educating ourselves. And as a white person, so no one is getting this information in schools. Yet if I am from a black family, I might be getting information down through family stories. I might start to hear some history that would never come down through a white family. And so education is really key. Understanding the issue is so important, especially before taking any action.
As Irving and others have said, most white people don't know that they benefit from a history of racism in America, a history that includes discriminatory policies enacted by both governmental and private entities that created prosperity among white people at the expense of African Americans. Therefore, in order to improve race relations in the United States, people must be more educated on these issues. And education starts with examining our own role in the story of race in America. Here's Libertyville High School junior Claire Mills.
In psych class a few days ago, we took one of the Harvard implicit bias tests that determines like how much you prefer like European Americans versus African Americans, like how quickly you associate them with good and bad words. And I guess I wasn't like surprised by my results, but more just like annoyed by them, because in my life I can probably count on my hands how many African American people I've known. Like pretty much all of my friends are white. I have like I know some people that are like Indian American or Asian American, but that's something that like that bias towards European Americans is like so ingrained in me, and I think in like pretty much every student in Libertyville, that we don't even realize when we're like acting exclusive or like having like negative thoughts. Like it's totally unconscious, and then you don't even realize that you're the way that you are until you're put into an environment where you're kind of forced to like confront that.
I hope that now you have a better understanding of race in America. But of course, these podcasts can't cover it all. If you want to learn more about racial identity, you can check out Debbie Irving's book, Waking Up White, She also has a great TED Talk that's available in addition to other resources on her website, debbieirving.com. And that concludes our series on race in Libertyville. Next episode will be about something completely different, but I'm really excited about it, so stay tuned for updates, and until next time, I'm Conor Kennedy, and you're listening to Drops of Ink Radio.